You're tired. Not just the kind of tired that sleep can fix. It's deeper than that. It's the kind of exhaustion that settles into your bones when you've tried and failed, when you've hoped and been disappointed, when you've given everything you had and watched it slip through your fingers anyway. You've been carrying something heavy for a long time now. Maybe it's regret. Maybe it's the weight of dreams that didn't come true. Maybe it's the haunting thought that keeps you awake at night, whispering that your best years are already gone, that you've somehow missed your moment, that the good parts of your life are now just memories you revisit when the present feels too empty to bear. There's a particular kind of pain in looking back at who you used to be. The person you were before life got complicated, before the losses, before the betrayals, before the doors slammed shut, before time started moving too fast and leaving you behind. You remember when you had more energy, more hope, more possibilities stretching out ahead of you like an open road. Now that road feels like it's narrowed, like the best exits were miles back and you missed them. Like everyone else somehow knew which turns to take while you ended up here, in this place you never planned to be, wondering how it all went so wrong. Maybe you're lying here tonight, thinking about the job you didn't get, the relationship that ended, the opportunity that went to someone else, the version of your life you were supposed to be living by now, the person you thought you'd become, the things you were certain would have happened already, and the gap between where you are and where you thought you'd be. It aches. It's not dramatic. It's not the kind of pain anyone sees. It's quiet and constant, like a low hum of disappointment that colors everything. You've learned to function with it. You've learned to smile when you need to. But when you're alone, when it's quiet like this, you feel it fully. The years behind you seem brighter somehow. Even the hard parts have a kind of glow now, because at least back then you still believed things could get better. At least you still had hope. At least you hadn't accumulated all these scars and disappointments and reasons to protect yourself. You think about the person you were at 20, at 30, whenever it was that you still felt like life was full of potential. That person wouldn't recognize you now. That person would be shocked to see where you ended up, what you settled for, what you lost, what never happened. There are specific moments you replay. That conversation where everything changed. That decision you can't take back. That day when you realized something precious was gone and it wasn't coming back. Those moments when you watched your life take a turn you didn't choose, and all you could do was try to survive it. You've tried to make peace with it. You've told yourself that this is just how life goes. Everyone's story has disappointments. Everyone has regrets. Everyone looks back and sees roads not taken. You've tried to be grateful for what you have. You've tried to focus on the present. You've tried to stop comparing your life to what it could have been. But late at night, when you're alone with your thoughts, the truth comes out. You're not at peace with it. You're grieving. You're grieving the life you didn't get to live. The person you didn't get to become. The dreams that died quietly without fanfare. The possibilities that closed without warning. And what makes it harder is that no one really sees it. Life keeps moving. People keep asking how you are and expecting the acceptable answer. The world doesn't stop because your heart is breaking over everything that didn't happen. So you've learned to carry this privately, to function despite it, to look fine when you're falling apart inside. You wonder sometimes if this is it, if this is all there is, if you're supposed to just accept that your brightest moments are in the rearview mirror now, if you're meant to spend the rest of your life looking backward at what was, instead of forward at what could be. There's a special kind of loneliness in feeling like your time has passed, like you missed your season, like whatever was supposed to happen for you already came and went and you weren't paying attention, or you weren't ready, or you weren't enough. Maybe you've been told to let it go, to move on, to stop dwelling on the past. And you've tried. God knows you've tried. But how do you let go of the person you were supposed to become? How do you stop mourning a future that was supposed to be yours? The practical advice doesn't help. The platitudes feel hollow. Everything happens for a reason. When one door closes, another opens. It'll all work out. These words bounce off the wall you've built around your disappointment. They don't reach the place where you're actually hurting, because your pain is specific. It's not generic. It's not theoretical. It's the exact shape of the life you don't have. The exact weight of the dreams you buried. The exact ache of watching years pass while you waited for something to change, for something to finally go right, for your turn to come. You've watched other people get their breakthroughs. You've celebrated their wins while privately wondering why not you. Why not yet? Why does everyone else seem to have a story of redemption, of second chances, of things working out, while you're still stuck in the middle of a story that doesn't seem to be going anywhere? You've tried to be patient. You've tried to stay hopeful. You've tried to believe that your time would come. But patience has a limit. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. And your heart is so tired of hoping for things that don't happen. There are pieces of you that feel broken beyond repair now. Not dramatically shattered, just quietly cracked in ways that don't show, but affect everything. Your ability to trust has cracks. Your capacity to dream has cracks. Your willingness to try again has cracks. You've become more careful, more guarded, more realistic, you tell yourself, though it feels more like you've just learned not to expect much. You've learned to protect yourself by not wanting things too badly, by not getting your hopes up, by not believing too deeply in possibilities that might just lead to more disappointment. And this isn't who you wanted to be. You wanted to be someone who stayed soft despite the hardships, someone who kept believing despite the setbacks, someone who remained open and hopeful and trusting. But life has a way of changing you. Pain has a way of teaching you to close off the tender parts of yourself. So here you are, lying in the dark, tired in a way that sleep won't fix, carrying disappointments that have no expiration date, wondering if this hollow ache is just part of life now, wondering if you'll ever feel excited about the future again, wondering if your best moments are truly behind you. The years keep passing, birthdays come and go, seasons change, and you're still waiting, still hoping something will shift, still carrying this quiet grief over everything that was supposed to happen but didn't. You look at your life, and it's not terrible. You're not ungrateful. There are good things, small joys, moments of peace, but there's also this persistent sense of incompleteness, of promises unfulfilled, of potential unrealized, of a life that was supposed to look different by now. And maybe the hardest part is that you don't know how to fix it. You don't know what you're supposed to do differently. You've tried. You've worked hard. You've been patient. You've done your best. And still, here you are, feeling like you're running out of time to become who you were meant to be. The dreams you had when you were younger feel naive now. The goals you set feel unreachable. The person you wanted to become feels like a stranger you'll never meet. And you're left trying to make peace with a life that feels smaller than it was supposed to be. You think about starting over sometimes, about making changes, about trying one more time. But you're so tired. And what if you try again and fail again? What if you hope again and get disappointed again? What if you open yourself up again and get hurt again? It feels safer to just accept things as they are, to stop fighting, to stop hoping for more, to make peace with less, to tell yourself that this is enough, even when your heart knows it isn't. The night is quiet around you now. The world has settled into sleep, but your mind is still turning over these thoughts, still sorting through the wreckage of expectations, still trying to figure out how to live with the gap between what is and what you thought would be. You've learned to smile through it, to function despite it, to look like you're fine when you're not. But alone like this, you don't have to pretend. You can feel the full weight of it. The sadness, the disappointment, the fear that this is all there is. And underneath all of that, there's a question you're almost afraid to ask. A question that feels both desperate and dangerous. A question that might be the last gasp of hope before you resign yourself to a smaller story. What if there's more? What if everything you've been through, every closed door, every disappointment, every detour, what if it wasn't the end of your story? What if it was actually leading somewhere you couldn't see? What if the best parts of your life aren't behind you at all? It feels almost reckless to consider it. You've been hurt too many times by hope. You've learned to manage your expectations, to protect yourself, to not believe in things that might not happen. But what if? What if all the years that felt wasted were actually preparation? What if all the doors that closed were protecting you from paths that would have led you away from something better? What if the timing that felt wrong was actually perfectly right in ways you couldn't understand yet? What if your story isn't over? What if your best days aren't memories to look back on, but promises still ahead of you? What if everything that's happened so far was just the beginning chapters of something bigger than you could imagine? It's hard to let yourself wonder. Hard to let that small flame of possibility flicker back to life. You've worked so hard to extinguish it, to protect yourself from more disappointment. But maybe, just maybe, there's a reason it won't stay out. Maybe you're lying here tonight not because your story is ending, but because it's about to turn in a direction you never expected. Maybe this feeling of being at the end is actually the feeling of being on the edge of a beginning. Maybe all the loss was making space. All the waiting was building something in you that you'll need for what's coming. All the disappointment was teaching you to recognize the real thing when it finally arrives. Maybe you're not too late. Maybe you haven't missed your chance. Maybe the dreams that died needed to die, so better ones could take root. Maybe the doors that closed were never meant for you. Maybe the path that felt wrong was actually leading you home. What if your best days really aren't behind you? What if they're ahead, waiting for you to arrive at them? What if everything, absolutely everything, has been moving you towards something you can't see yet, but that's already being prepared? It's a radical thought after so much disappointment. A dangerous thought when you've learned not to hope too hard. But what if it's true? What if the voice that's been whispering, "It's too late," has been lying to you? What if the story you've been telling yourself about missed chances and wasted years isn't the real story at all? What if there's another voice, quieter but truer, that's been trying to reach you? A voice that knows things you don't. A voice that sees what you can't. A voice that's been with you through every disappointment and still believes in what's ahead for you. What if that voice is right? There's a voice that's been trying to reach you through all of this. A voice that doesn't sound like the harsh critic in your head or the doubts that keep you awake. A voice that's been there in every moment you thought you were alone, in every disappointment you thought would break you, in every closed door you thought meant the end. And this voice wants you to know something about your past. Something you haven't been able to see because you've been too close to the pain, too deep in the story to recognize what was actually happening while you were just trying to survive. Your past wasn't a series of failures. It was a foundation being laid. Every moment that felt like losing was actually you being redirected. Every door that closed wasn't rejection, it was protection. Every time you thought you were being passed over, you were actually being prepared for something those opportunities could never have given you. You look back and see waste. But there's another perspective, a view from higher up, where every thread of your story connects into a pattern you couldn't see while you were living it. From where you stand, it looks like chaos. From where God stands, it looks like careful construction. That job you didn't get, the one you were so sure was meant for you, the one that would have fixed everything. You can't see it now, but that path would have led you away from what's actually coming. The door closed not because you weren't good enough, but because you were being saved for something better suited to who you're becoming. That relationship that ended and left you shattered, questioning your worth, wondering if you'd ever feel whole again. It wasn't a sign that you were unlovable. It was a sign that you were being loved enough to be spared from a future that would have slowly diminished you. The pain of that ending was real, but so was the mercy in it. Those dreams you had to let go of, the ones you mourned like losses, because they felt so essential to who you were supposed to be. They were good dreams, honest dreams, but they were too small for what's being built in you. You couldn't see it then. You can barely see it now. But those dreams had to die so that bigger ones, truer ones, ones that actually matched the capacity being developed in you, could take their place. You think God was absent during your hardest moments. You think the silence meant abandonment. You think the unanswered prayers meant you weren't heard. But what if the opposite was true? What if you were being held so close during those times that you couldn't distinguish between God's presence and your own heartbeat? What if every moment you thought you were falling, you were actually being caught? What if every time you thought you were being forgotten, you were actually being remembered with such specific intention that nothing, not one tear, not one disappointment, not one sleepless night, was wasted? The years you call wasted, God calls them essential. The detours you regret, God calls them divine redirection. The failures you can't forgive yourself for, God calls them preparation that couldn't have happened any other way. You've been carrying so much shame about where you are, about what you don't have, about what hasn't happened yet, about the time that's passed, about the chances you think you missed, about the person you think you should be by now. But here's what you need to hear. You're not behind. You're exactly where you need to be for what's being prepared for you. Not a day late, not a moment off schedule. Right here, right now, even in this place that feels like nowhere. Those years that feel lost, they were teaching you things you'll need. Building strength in places that had to be reinforced before you could carry what's coming. Developing wisdom that only comes through walking paths you'd never have chosen. Creating capacity in you that only pressure and time and disappointment can forge. You learned things in the valley you could never have learned on the mountaintop. You developed muscles in the waiting that you'll need for the harvest. You gained vision in the darkness that will serve you when things finally come to light. God wasn't punishing you during those hard years. God was preparing you. Every closed door was God saying, "Not that way, not that thing, not with those people. What I have for you is different." Every delay was God saying, "Not yet, you're not ready, and it's not ready, and the timing has to be perfect for this to work the way I designed it." Every disappointment that felt like a no was actually God protecting your yes. Protecting the real thing. guarding what's actually meant for you from being confused with what merely looked good from a distance. You think you've made too many mistakes, that you've disqualified yourself, that you've used up your chances, that surely, by now you've exhausted whatever grace might have been available to you. But grace doesn't work like that. Mercy doesn't have a limit. God's patience with you isn't running out. What you call failure, God calls process. What you call too late, God calls right on time. What you call disqualification, God calls development. What you call the end, God calls the middle. You're standing in the middle of your story, thinking it's the conclusion. You're reading the introduction and calling it the epilogue. You're in the second act break, convinced the show is over. But the best scenes haven't been written yet. The breakthrough moments haven't arrived. The redemption arc hasn't begun. All those prayers you thought went unanswered, they were being answered in ways you couldn't recognize because God was working on a different timeline than you expected, toward outcomes bigger than what you were asking for. You were praying for provision. God was building you into someone who would eventually own the whole vineyard. You were asking for relief. God was developing you into someone who would bring relief to others. You were seeking comfort. God was forging you into someone strong enough to carry not just your own story, but to help others carry theirs. The wait wasn't empty. The silence wasn't abandonment. The delay wasn't denial. It was all working. Every moment. Even the ones that felt like death. Especially those ones. Seeds don't look alive when they're underground. In the dark. In the dirt. Covered. Hidden. If you dug them up, you'd think nothing was happening. You'd think they were wasted. Buried. Dead. But beneath the surface, in the invisible places, everything was working. Roots were going deep. Life was gathering strength. The breakthrough was being prepared. You've been underground. In the dark seasons. In the hidden years. And it felt like death. It felt like being buried. Like being forgotten. Like being wasted in the dirt while everyone else was blooming in the light. But you weren't being buried. You were being planted. And everything that happened in that dark place, everything that felt like it was crushing you, was actually working to push you toward the surface, toward the light, toward the breakthrough that's coming. God saw you in those moments you felt most alone. God was close in those nights you cried yourself to sleep. God was working in those seasons when you saw no evidence of anything good happening in your life. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was overlooked. Every tear was collected. Every prayer was heard. Every moment mattered. The pain you went through wasn't meaningless. It was meaningful in ways you'll only understand later. It produced things in you that only pain can produce. Depth that only comes from suffering. Compassion that only comes from your own wounds being tended. Wisdom that only comes from walking through fire and coming out the other side. You're not the same person you were when this started. The waiting changed you. The disappointment shaped you. The loss hollowed out places in you that needed to be emptied so they could be filled with something better. Something real. Something lasting. God wasn't trying to break you. God was trying to break you open. To get past the protective layers you built. To reach the real you underneath all the performance and pretending and trying to be what everyone else needed. Those layers had to crack. That old version of you had to fall away. The self you constructed to survive, to please, to fit in, to be accepted. That self was never the real you. It was armor. And armor is heavy. And at some point, you have to take it off if you want to live free. So God allowed things that cracked the armor. Relationships that ended and forced you to stop finding your identity in being needed. Jobs you didn't get that forced you to stop measuring your worth by your productivity. Plans that fell apart, that forced you to stop controlling everything and trust something bigger than your own effort. It hurt. It still hurts. But it was necessary. Because the real you, the you that God sees and loves and is calling forward, that person couldn't emerge until the false self was peeled away. Until the layers of protection and performance and pretending were stripped back. And now you're raw. Exposed. You feel vulnerable and uncertain, and not at all put together. But this is actually progress. This is you becoming real. This is the armor coming off. This is the false self dying so the true self can live. God isn't disappointed in where you are. God is actually pleased you made it here. To this place of honesty. To this place where you can't fake it anymore. To this place where you've stopped trying to be impressive, and you're just willing to be real. This is where the real work begins. Not when you had it all together. Not when you were strong and confident and sure of yourself. Now, when you're weak and confused and uncertain. When you're stripped down to nothing but need and honesty, and a desperate hope that there might still be something ahead worth living for. You thought you had to be strong for God to use you. You thought you had to have it all figured out. You thought you had to be further along. But God doesn't need your strength. God needs your surrender. God doesn't need your perfection. God needs your permission. God doesn't need you to have all the answers. God just needs you to trust that there's a plan even when you can't see it. And you're here, in this place of surrender, in this place of not knowing, in this place where you've run out of your own solutions and your own strength and your own ability to make things happen. And this is exactly where God wanted you. Because as long as you thought you could do it yourself, you would keep trying. As long as you had backup plans, you wouldn't fully trust. As long as you could control outcomes, you wouldn't truly surrender. But now you're at the end of yourself. And that's not the worst place to be. That's the best place to be. Because that's where God's strength shows up. All those times you felt weak, God was being your strength. All those times you felt lost, God was being your guide. All those times you felt hopeless, God was being your hope. You just couldn't recognize it because you were looking for help that looked like what you thought you needed, instead of recognizing that what you needed was being given in forms you didn't expect. God wasn't giving you the life you planned because God was giving you something better. God wasn't answering your prayers the way you wanted because God was answering them in ways that would actually work. God wasn't moving on your timeline because God's timing is perfect even when it feels torturously slow. You wanted the shortcut. God was giving you the scenic route because there were things you needed to see along the way. You wanted the quick fix. God was giving you deep healing because surface solutions weren't going to be enough for what you're being prepared for. You wanted immediate relief. God was building lasting transformation. And yes, it took longer. Yes, it hurt more. Yes, it cost you things you didn't want to pay. But it's producing something in you that the easy path never could have created. Character that only comes from walking through hard things. Faith that only develops when you have to trust without seeing. Strength that only builds when you keep going even when you want to quit. You're not the same person who started this journey. You couldn't be. The journey changed you. And those changes, even the painful ones, even the ones you'd undo if you could, they're making you into someone capable of carrying what's coming next. Because what's coming is worth everything it took to get you ready for it. The pain was real, but so is the purpose. The loss was genuine, but so is what's being gained. The wait was long, but so is the reward that's being prepared. God hasn't forgotten you. God hasn't given up on you. God hasn't moved on to someone else. God is still working, still moving, still orchestrating, still arranging, still preparing. Every single thing that happened, the good, the bad, the confusing, the devastating, it's all being woven together into something that will eventually make sense. Not yet. You're too close to see it. But one day you'll look back and you'll see how it all connected. How every thread mattered. How nothing was wasted. How even the darkest moments were necessary for the light that's coming. Your past wasn't punishment. It was preparation. And what you're being prepared for is better than anything you lost. Bigger than any door that closed. More beautiful than any dream that died. You couldn't see it while you were in it. You can barely believe it now. But it's true. God was with you every moment. God was working through every disappointment. God was using even the pain to build something in you that couldn't exist any other way. And now, after all of it, after everything you've been through, you're standing right where you need to be. Not a moment too late. Not an inch out of position. Right here, ready for what comes next. There's something you need to understand about seasons. Something that might change how you see everything you've been through. Winter always feels permanent when you're in it. When the cold settles in, and the days grow short, and everything that was once green and alive appears dead, it's hard to believe that spring will ever come. The trees stand bare. The ground freezes solid. The world turns grey and harsh. And when you're standing in the middle of it, when you've been cold for so long that you can't remember what warmth feels like, it seems impossible that anything could ever bloom again. But the thing about winter is that it's never the end of the story. It's just one chapter. One season in a cycle that keeps turning whether we believe in it or not. You've been in winter, maybe for longer than you thought you could survive. The cold has been relentless. The darkness has been heavy. Everything that once brought you life and joy and hope seems to have withered away. And you've been standing in the middle of this frozen landscape, wondering if spring is even real, or if it's just something you imagined in better times. But winter has a purpose. It's not just emptiness. It's not just death. It's preparation. Beneath the frozen ground, beneath the surface where nothing appears to be happening, there's work being done that you can't see. Seeds are splitting open in the dark soil. Roots are growing deeper, reaching down into places they could never access when the conditions were easy. Trees that look dead are actually resting, gathering strength, preparing for the explosion of growth that will come when the season changes. Winter forces things underground. It pushes life deeper. It makes roots reach further. And while it's happening, while everything is hidden and dormant and appears lifeless, it feels like death. It feels like ending. It feels like nothing good is happening. But that's not what's actually occurring. What's actually occurring is that foundations are being built. Strength is being developed. Capacity is being increased. All in the invisible places. All in ways that won't be apparent until the season shifts. You've been living through your winter, your season of hiddenness, your time of dormancy, and it's felt exactly like you'd expect winter to feel: cold, dark, endless, lifeless. You've looked around at your circumstances and seen nothing growing, nothing blooming, nothing thriving. Just barrenness, just waiting, just surviving. And you've started to believe that this is all there is. That winter is your permanent state. That you're not in a season anymore. This is just your life now. Cold, dark, stripped of everything that once made you feel alive. But that's not true. Winter is a season, not a life sentence. And seasons, by their very nature, change. The trees don't make spring happen. They don't force buds to form or push leaves to grow. They simply endure winter, trusting that the change will come because it always has, because it's written into the design of things, because winter has never been permanent no matter how permanent it feels. Spring doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for you to believe in it. It comes when it's time, when the conditions are right, when the preparation underneath the surface has done its work. And right now, while you're still in your winter, while you're still cold and waiting and wondering if anything will ever change, spring is being prepared. Not someday far off. Not eventually in some distant future. Now, in the invisible places, in the parts of your story you can't see yet. The work that winter did in you, the deepening, the strengthening, the stripping away of what was superficial. That work wasn't for nothing. It was getting you ready, building your capacity, preparing you to hold what's coming without breaking under the weight of it. Because spring doesn't come gently. It comes with force, with abundance, with growth so rapid and abundant that if you weren't made strong in winter, you couldn't handle it. The tree that didn't sink deep roots in the dormant season will topple when the spring winds come. The seed that didn't split open in the dark soil will never become what it was meant to be. So winter wasn't wasted. It was essential. The darkness wasn't purposeless. It was productive in ways you couldn't measure while you were enduring it. The waiting wasn't empty. It was full of invisible work that will become visible when the season turns. You've been asking when things will change, when you'll finally see movement, when something, anything, will start growing in your life again. And that question makes sense because you're tired. You're so tired of winter. You're ready for something new, something green, something alive. But here's what you need to know. The season is already turning. You just can't see it yet because the first movements of spring happen underground, in the dark, in places you can't observe. The ice is beginning to thaw in ways that aren't visible yet. The soil is warming at depths you can't measure. The light is returning in increments too small to notice day by day, but undeniable when you look at the whole arc. Spring doesn't announce itself. It whispers at first. A slight softening in the air. A subtle shift in the light. Small changes that are easy to miss if you're not paying attention. If you're expecting spring to arrive like a parade, you'll miss the quiet ways it's already beginning. And this is where you are right now. In the space between winter and spring. In the time when the season is turning, but you can't see dramatic evidence yet. It feels like you're still in winter because the landscape hasn't transformed overnight. But beneath the surface, in the places that matter most, everything is beginning to move. That's the thing about seasons. They don't switch instantly. There's transition. There's overlap. There are days in late winter that feel like spring and days in early spring that feel like winter returned. The change isn't a single moment. It's a process, a slow turning, a gradual shift. And you're in that shift right now. You're in the turning, the between, the not quite winter but not yet spring. It's an awkward place, an uncomfortable place, a place where you can't quite trust what you're experiencing because it's all so subtle and you've been disappointed before. But the turning is happening whether you feel it or not. The season is changing whether you can see the evidence yet or not. Spring is coming because spring always comes after winter. Always. Without exception. It's built into the way things work. It's a promise written into creation itself. You don't have to make it happen. You don't have to force growth or manufacture change or push things into bloom. You just have to trust that the same power that turns winter into spring every single year, without fail, is at work in your life too. The same faithfulness that brings the world back to life after the death of winter is bringing your story back to life after the death of your disappointments. The seed doesn't panic underground. It doesn't worry that it's been buried too long or too deep. It doesn't question whether spring will come. It simply does what seeds do in the dark. It splits open. It sends roots down. It prepares for the emergence that it somehow knows is coming even though it's never seen the sun. You're like that seed right now. You've been underground, in the dark, in the place where nothing visible is happening. And it's felt like burial, like being trapped, like death. But what if it's been planting? What if everything that felt like ending was actually beginning? What if the darkness wasn't a tomb, but a womb? Seeds don't grow in the light. They grow in the dark. They need the pressure of the soil, the absence of sight, the limitation of space. These things that feel like obstacles are actually requirements. The darkness isn't preventing growth. It's enabling it. And you've been in your darkness long enough now. The work that could only happen in hidden places has been done. The roots have gone deep. The strength has been built. The preparation is nearly complete. And spring, your spring, is closer than you think. You keep looking for proof, for evidence, for something you can point to and say, see, things are changing. But the best changes always start where you can't see them. In your heart before they reach your circumstances. In your perspective before they alter your reality. In your spirit before they manifest in your situation. And those changes have already begun. You're not who you were when your winter started. The way you see things has shifted. The things you value have rearranged themselves. The faith you've developed through enduring, through holding on when there was nothing to hold on to. That faith is new. It wasn't there before winter. It grew in the dark. That's spring starting. Not in your bank account, or your relationships, or your career. In you. In the places that matter most. In the soil of your soul, where real transformation happens. The outer changes will come. They're on their way. But they had to start inside first. Because if spring came to your circumstances before it came to your character, you wouldn't be ready for it. You'd go back to old patterns, old ways of thinking, old dependencies that weren't serving you. The blessing would come, but you wouldn't have the capacity to steward it well. So winter did its work in you first. It changed you from the inside out. It taught you things you couldn't learn in easier seasons. It developed strength you didn't know you needed. It prepared you for a spring that's bigger than just having your old life back. It prepared you for a spring that's about stepping into something entirely new. You thought you wanted your old dreams back. The ones that died. The ones you had to let go of. But those dreams were seeds that had to fall into the ground and die so that something better could grow from them. You can't see the connection yet. You can't see how what died is related to what's coming to life. But there's a through line. A continuity. The new thing carries the DNA of the old thing, but it's transformed. Resurrected. Made into something that couldn't exist if the original hadn't died first. This is how spring works. Nothing that was alive in the previous season comes back exactly as it was. The leaves that fell don't return. New leaves grow. The flowers that died don't resurrect. New flowers bloom. Everything that emerges in spring is new, but it's connected to what came before. It's built on the foundation of what looked like loss. Your spring won't be a return to what was. It'll be an arrival at what's next. And what's next is better than what was. Not because what was didn't matter, but because what was prepared you for what's coming. The old dreams had to die so new ones could emerge. The old version of your life had to end so a new chapter could begin. And this new chapter, it's not going to look like you expected. It's going to be surprising, different, unexpected. Because spring never looks exactly like you think it will when you're imagining it from the middle of winter. It's always more abundant, more colorful, more alive than your winter-weary mind could picture. Right now you can barely imagine anything good. Winter has dulled your ability to dream. You've been in survival mode so long that you've forgotten how to envision thriving. Your imagination has been frozen along with everything else. You can't picture what spring might look like because you've been cold for too long. But that's okay. You don't have to be able to picture it. Spring doesn't require your imagination. It just requires your trust. Your willingness to believe that even though you can't see it yet, even though you can't feel it yet, even though winter still seems to have its grip on everything, change is coming. Warmth is returning. Life is emerging. The first signs will be small. So small you might miss them if you're waiting for something dramatic. A slight softening in your heart toward hope. A random moment of unexpected peace. A conversation that feels divinely timed. A door that opens just a crack. These are the early whispers of spring. The first buds forming on branches that look dead. Don't dismiss them because they're small. Don't overlook them because they're subtle. Spring always starts quietly, with small things, with gentle movements, with whispers before shouts. If you're only looking for the full bloom, you'll miss the miracle of the first bud. And those first buds are forming now. In your life, in your story, in places you're not even looking yet, because you've trained yourself not to hope too hard. But hope is starting to stir again, whether you're ready for it or not. Life is beginning to push through the frozen ground, whether you believe it's possible or not. Because this is what seasons do. They turn. They change. They move from death to life, from barren to abundant, from winter to spring. Not because of anything you do, but because it's built into the design. It's how things work. It's a promise that's kept year after year after year. And your winter is ending. Not might be ending. Not eventually will end. Is ending. Right now. The season is turning. The shift is happening. Spring is coming. You've endured enough. You've waited long enough. You've survived enough darkness. The season that required all that from you. That season is completing its work. And the season that's coming is going to give back everything winter took, and more. Because spring doesn't come to simply restore. It comes to resurrect, to make new, to bring forth life that's more abundant than what existed before winter came. Spring doesn't just replace what was lost. It multiplies it, transforms it, brings it back in forms more glorious than what died. This is what's ahead for you. Not just recovery, not just getting back to where you were. Resurrection, transformation, life that's more abundant than you experienced before your winter began. Joy that's deeper because it's been tested. Peace that's more solid because it's been forged in difficulty. Hope that's more real because it survived the season when there was every reason to give up. Your best days aren't in the past. They're not in the winter you've been enduring. They're in the spring that's breaking through right now. And spring doesn't ask if you're ready. It doesn't wait for you to feel prepared. It simply comes, with force, with abundance, with life that cannot be contained. Get ready. The season is turning. Your winter is ending. And spring, your spring, the one designed specifically for you, the one being prepared while you were in the dark, it's closer than you think. While you've been looking at what ended, God has been building what's beginning. While you've been grieving the doors that closed, new doors have been taking shape that you don't even know exist yet. Doors perfectly designed for who you've become, not who you used to be. Doors that lead to places your old self couldn't have handled, but your transformed self is now ready for. Right now, in this very moment, there are things being arranged on your behalf in places you can't see. Conversations happening that involve your future. Connections forming that will change the trajectory of your story. Opportunities being prepared that have your name written on them. You can't see any of it yet because it's all happening behind the scenes, in the invisible realm where God works before things manifest in the physical world. But just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not real. Just because you can't feel it doesn't mean it's not happening. There are people you haven't met yet who are going to play significant roles in your next chapter. People who will open doors for you. People who will see something in you that you've stopped seeing in yourself. People who will speak words over you that will unlock things that have been dormant inside you for years. These people are out there right now, living their own lives, walking their own journeys, completely unaware that your paths are going to cross at exactly the right moment. God is orchestrating it, arranging it, making sure that when the timing is perfect, when you're both ready, your stories will intersect in ways that will benefit both of you. You've felt so isolated, so alone in your struggle, like no one understands what you've been through or where you are. But there are others who have walked similar paths, who carry similar scars, who understand in ways that words can't capture. And some of them are about to enter your life. Not randomly, intentionally, divinely appointed. The relationships that are coming aren't going to be like the ones that ended. They're going to be different, healthier, built on foundations that can actually support real intimacy and trust. The painful endings you experienced weren't just losses, they were clearings, making space for connections that are actually meant for this season of your life. You've been afraid to hope for good relationships again. You've built walls to protect yourself from more disappointment. But those walls are about to become unnecessary because what's coming won't require that kind of protection. The people God is bringing are safe. They're genuine. They're aligned with where you're going, not where you've been. And it's not just relationships. Opportunities are being prepared that you haven't even thought to pray for because they're beyond what you believed was possible for someone like you, with your history, with your limitations, with your past. But God doesn't see your limitations the way you do. God sees capacity that's been built through everything you've endured. God sees strength that was forged in your weakest moments. God sees potential that's been unlocked through the very experiences you thought disqualified you. The job that's coming, the opportunity that's forming, the breakthrough that's being arranged. It's going to require exactly what you've developed in the hidden years. The patience you learned while waiting, the resilience you built while enduring, the wisdom you gained while suffering, the empathy you developed through your own pain. Nothing you went through was wasted. Every skill you had to develop just to survive is going to become essential for what you're being called to next. Every lesson you learn the hard way is going to serve you in ways you can't imagine yet. Every time you had to dig deep and find strength you didn't know you had, that was training, preparation, development. You're not the same person you were before your trials began. You're more capable now, more equipped, more ready for what's coming than you realize. The old you couldn't have handled what's ahead. You would have been overwhelmed, underprepared, not ready. But the you that's been refined by fire, shaped by pressure, transformed by difficulty. This version of you is exactly what's needed for the next chapter. You're ready in ways you don't recognize yet, because you're still seeing yourself through the lens of your struggles instead of seeing yourself the way God sees you. As someone who has been prepared, equipped, and positioned for something significant. There are places you're going to go that you can't reach from where you used to be. You had to be moved, shifted, repositioned. And that process felt like loss because you were being taken from the familiar, from what you knew, from where you were comfortable. But you were being moved into position, into alignment, into the exact place you need to be for what comes next. Think about it. If you had gotten what you wanted when you wanted it, where would you be right now? If that door had opened, if that relationship had worked out, if that dream had come true on your timeline, would you be better off? Or would you be stuck in something that looked good from a distance, but wasn't actually right for you? God saved you from settling, from accepting less than what was actually meant for you, from building a life on a foundation that wouldn't hold. The closed doors weren't rejections, they were redirections, and the direction you were being turned toward is better than the path you were trying to force. You couldn't see it at the time. You still can't see the full picture, but you're going to. One day you're going to look back at this exact moment, this season of waiting and wondering and barely holding on, and you're going to see it clearly. You're going to see how every piece fit together, how every detour was necessary, how every delay was actually perfect timing. And you're going to be grateful, not just relieved that it worked out, but genuinely grateful that it didn't work out the way you planned. Because what God planned was so much better than what you could have planned for yourself. Right now, while you're waiting, God is working. In the financial realm, in the relational realm, in the professional realm, in the spiritual realm, things are being moved into place. Resources are being allocated. Favor is being released. Doors are being unlocked. Pathways are being cleared. You think you're stuck, but you're actually being positioned. You think nothing is happening, but everything is happening, just not where you can see it yet. You think you're behind, but you're actually right on schedule for what God has planned. The blessings that are coming aren't going to be small. They're not going to be barely enough. They're not going to just meet your needs. They're going to overflow. Abundance isn't just getting by. It's having more than enough. It's having surplus. It's being blessed to the point where you can't keep it all to yourself because there's too much. That's what's being prepared. Not just provision, but overflow. Not just answers, but exceedingly abundantly above what you could ask or think. Not just enough to make it through, but enough to thrive and enough left over to bless others who are walking through what you walked through. You're going to be on the other side of this. And when you are, you're going to have a testimony that gives hope to people who are in their own winters right now. You're going to have wisdom to share that only comes from walking the path you've walked. You're going to have resources to give that you wouldn't have if you'd gotten what you wanted when you wanted it. God is thinking bigger than your immediate relief. God is working toward your long-term purpose. And that purpose includes being a source of hope and help for others, not just experiencing breakthrough yourself. So the breakthrough that's coming isn't just for you. It's also for everyone your story is going to touch. Everyone who needs to hear that winter ends. Everyone who needs to know that God doesn't abandon people in hard seasons. Everyone who needs proof that the best days really can be ahead, not behind. Your life is about to become evidence. Proof. A living testimony that God is faithful, that waiting isn't wasted, that closed doors lead to better openings, that pain produces purpose, that loss leads to greater gain. And the people who are going to need your testimony are already out there. going through their own winters, wondering if spring will ever come, questioning if they can hold on. And your story, your breakthrough, is going to be exactly what they need to keep going, to keep believing, to keep trusting that their season is also about to turn. This is bigger than you thought. The wait has been longer than you expected because what's coming is bigger than you imagined. The preparation had to be thorough because the assignment is significant. The testing had to be complete because the blessing has to rest on a foundation that can hold it. You couldn't have received this before now. It wouldn't have worked. The timing had to be exact. The conditions had to be right. You had to be ready, and it had to be ready, and the moment had to be aligned with the larger story God is writing. And now, after all the waiting, after all the preparation, after all the refining, things are aligning. The pieces are coming together. The timing is arriving. The moment is approaching. You're going to see movement soon. Not vague possibilities. Concrete evidence. Actual doors opening. Real opportunities appearing. Tangible changes occurring. Things that make you catch your breath and think, is this really happening? Is this really for me? Yes, it's really happening. And yes, it's really for you. Because you've been faithful in the dark. You've held on when you had every reason to let go. You've kept believing even when belief felt ridiculous. You've maintained hope even when hope seemed foolish. And that faithfulness, that persistence, that refusal to give up completely, it mattered. It counted. It was seen. God doesn't forget faithfulness. God doesn't overlook endurance. God doesn't ignore the prayers whispered in desperation at 3 a.m. when you were too tired and broken to even form words. Every one of them was heard. Every one of them mattered. Every one of them is about to be answered in ways that will make you understand why the wait was necessary. The answer you've been waiting for is coming. The breakthrough you've been believing for is forming. The miracle you've been needing is being prepared. And when it arrives, when you see it, when you experience it, you're going to know beyond any doubt that it was God, that it was worth the wait, that the timing was perfect even though it felt endlessly delayed. Your faithfulness in the darkness is about to meet God's favor in the light. Your persistence through the winter is about to be rewarded with the abundance of spring. Your willingness to trust when you couldn't see is about to result in blessings so visible, so undeniable, that everyone around you will know something significant happened. This is your moment. Not someday. Not eventually. Now. The season is shifting. The tide is turning. The breakthrough is breaking through. Everything you've been through has led to this. Every tear, every prayer, every moment of doubt that you pushed through anyway, every day you got up and kept going even though you didn't feel like it. It was all building toward this moment. This turning point. This transition from what was to what's about to be. And what's about to be is better than anything you lost. Greater than anything that ended. More beautiful than anything you had to let go of. Because the best chapters of your story, the ones you're going to look back on years from now with joy and gratitude and wonder, those chapters haven't been written yet. They're coming. They're close. Closer than you think. Closer than you dare to believe. But it's true. The best is still ahead. The greatest moments of your life are in front of you, not behind you. The most joyful seasons are waiting for you to step into them. The most significant relationships are about to begin. The most fulfilling work is about to start. Your best days aren't behind you. They never were. They're ahead. Right ahead. Just around the corner. Just past this final stretch of winter. Just beyond this last moment of waiting. And soon, very soon, you're going to step into them. You're going to experience them. You're going to live them. And when you do, when you're standing in the fullness of what God prepared while you waited, you're going to understand. You're going to see why it had to happen this way. Why the timing had to be exactly what it was. Why the preparation had to be so thorough. And you're going to be grateful. Not just for the blessing, but for the journey that got you there. Because the journey made you someone who could receive the blessing, steward it well, and use it to bless others. Get ready. Everything is about to change. The season is turning. The wait is ending. Your spring is here. You can rest now. After everything you've carried, after all the striving and struggling, and trying to figure out how to make things work, after all the sleepless nights and anxious days and moments of panic, when you wondered if you'd ever feel okay again, you can rest now. Because the outcome isn't on your shoulders. It never was. You've been carrying weight that was never meant for you to bear. You've been trying to force things to happen that can only unfold in their own time. You've been fighting battles that aren't yours to win because they've already been won on your behalf. You can put it down now. All of it. The worry about how it's going to work out. The fear that you've waited too long. The anxiety that maybe you missed your chance. the pressure to make something happen, the burden of having to figure it all out. It's not your job to orchestrate your future. It's not your responsibility to arrange all the pieces. It's not on you to open the doors, or create the opportunities, or manufacture the breakthrough. Your job is simpler than that. Your job is to trust, to rest, to believe that what's being prepared for you is already in motion. Rest doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean stopping or quitting, or resigning yourself to less than you hoped for. Rest means releasing your grip on control. It means loosening your hold on outcomes. It means trusting that there's a plan working itself out that's bigger and better than anything you could force into being through your own effort. You've been exhausted because you've been trying to do God's job. You've been attempting to control things that aren't meant to be controlled. You've been carrying responsibility for outcomes that were never yours to manage. And it's been crushing you because you weren't designed to carry that weight. But you can set it down now. You don't have to know how it's all going to work out. You don't have to have the next 10 steps figured out. You don't have to see the full picture. You just have to trust that the one who started this story knows how to finish it. And God does. God knows exactly how this unfolds. God sees what you can't see. God knows what needs to happen, and when it needs to happen, and how all the pieces need to come together. And God is actively working on it. Not someday, not eventually, but right now, in this moment, while you're reading these words. Things are being arranged, moved, shifted, aligned. And none of it requires your stress, or your worry, or your anxiety. It requires your trust, your willingness to believe that you're not doing this alone, your openness to the possibility that someone wiser and more powerful than you is handling the details. This is what rest looks like. Not inactivity, but trust. Not passivity, but peace. Not giving up, but letting go of the need to control everything. You've been holding your breath for so long, waiting for the other shoe to drop, bracing for the next disappointment, preparing for things to go wrong again. But you can breathe now, deeply, fully, because what's coming isn't another letdown. What's coming is the breakthrough you've been holding on for. And it's not fragile. It's not going to fall apart. It's not going to be taken away. What God is building in your life right now has a foundation strong enough to last. It's not temporary. It's not going to disappoint you. It's not going to be another thing you have to grieve losing. This is solid, real, lasting, and it's coming whether you're anxious about it or not. Your worry doesn't make it come faster. Your peace doesn't make it come slower. It's coming in perfect timing regardless of your emotional state. So you might as well rest while you wait. Rest in knowing that God's promises don't have expiration dates. They don't age out. They don't become invalid because time has passed. What was spoken over your life years ago is still true today. What was promised when you first believed is still being worked toward. Nothing has been cancelled. Nothing has been forgotten. Nothing has been abandoned. Every promise God made to you is still active, still in motion, still being brought to fulfillment. The delays weren't denials. The waiting wasn't wasting. The silence wasn't abandonment. It was all part of the process of bringing those promises to pass in ways that would actually work, in ways that would last, in ways that would bless you without destroying you. Because some blessings require you to be ready for them. Some promises need time to mature before they can be fulfilled. Some breakthroughs would actually harm you if they came before you were prepared to handle them well. And God loves you too much to give you something you're not ready for, even when you think you are, even when you're desperate for it. So the wait was never God withholding. It was God protecting. It was God developing you into someone who could receive what was promised without it destroying what God was building in you. The blessing is coming, but so is the capacity to steward it. Both had to develop together. And now you're ready. Maybe you don't feel ready. Maybe you still feel broken and uncertain and completely unprepared. But you're more ready than you think. The very things that make you feel unqualified are actually what qualify you. The brokenness taught you humility. The uncertainty taught you dependence. The feeling of being unprepared keeps you relying on strength that's not your own. You're ready for what's coming. Not because you're perfect or have it all figured out or have arrived at some place of total confidence. You're ready because you've been made ready through everything you've walked through. The trials weren't random. The difficulties weren't meaningless. They were preparation, and the preparation is complete. So you can rest in that too. Rest in knowing you're not going to miss what's meant for you. Rest in trusting that when the moment comes, you'll be equipped for it. Rest in believing that you've been made ready even if you don't feel ready. God doesn't set you up to fail. God doesn't prepare opportunities you can't handle. God doesn't open doors you're not equipped to walk through. When the breakthrough comes, when the blessing arrives, when the promise manifests, you'll be ready for it. Everything in you that needed to be developed has been developed. Everything that needed to be healed has been healed or is healing. Everything that needed to change has changed or is changing. You're not the same person you were when this journey started. And that's good. That's necessary. Because the you that you were couldn't have carried what's coming. But the you that you've become can. Rest in the transformation. Rest in the growth. Rest in the fact that nothing about this process has been wasted, including the parts that hurt the most. Especially the parts that hurt the most. Those were the places where the deepest work happened. The most significant changes occurred. The most essential development took place. You can trust what's been built in you. You can trust what you've become. You can trust that the person you are now is exactly who you need to be for what comes next. And what comes next is good. Really good. Better than you're allowing yourself to imagine, because you're still protecting yourself from disappointment. But you can lower those defenses now. You can allow yourself to hope again, to dream again, to believe that good things really are possible for you. Because they are. They're not just possible, they're promised. They're not just someday, they're soon. They're not just maybe, they're certain. Your best days aren't behind you. They're not in the past. They're not in the version of your life that ended. They're ahead, in the future that's forming, in the season that's coming, in the chapter that's about to begin. And you're going to see it. You're going to experience it. You're going to live in it. This isn't wishful thinking or empty encouragement. This is truth. This is what's actually happening in the invisible realm right now. This is the reality that's about to manifest in ways you can see and touch and experience. Every morning that you wake up is God saying, I'm not done with you yet. Every day you open your eyes is evidence that your story is still being written. Every breath you take is proof that there's more ahead, that the ending hasn't come, that the best chapters are still to be written. You've survived everything that tried to stop your story. Every loss that could have destroyed you didn't. Every disappointment that could have broken you permanently only cracked you open. Every season that felt like it would never end eventually did. You're still here, still breathing, still standing, still believing, even if just barely. And that's enough. That small thread of belief that you've been holding on to through everything. That's enough for God to work with. That tiny flicker of hope that refuses to be completely extinguished, no matter how hard the winds of disappointment have blown. That's enough. God doesn't need your perfect faith. God just needs your willingness, your openness. You're small, yes, in the midst of all your doubts. That's enough to work with. That's enough to build on. That's enough for miracles to flow through. So rest in your imperfect faith. Rest in your messy trust. Rest in your broken but still believing heart. You don't have to have it all together. You don't have to be certain. You don't have to have unwavering confidence. You just have to be willing to see what happens. Willing to stay open to possibility. Willing to not completely give up. And you haven't given up. Even on your worst days. Even when you wanted to, even when it seemed pointless to keep going, you didn't give up. You kept breathing, kept moving, kept putting one foot in front of the other. And that persistence, that refusal to completely quit, that determination to survive even when you couldn't see the point, that matters. Every day you didn't give up was a day of victory. Every morning you got out of bed, even though you didn't want to, was an act of faith. Every moment you chose to keep going even though you couldn't see the purpose was you saying yes to your future, whether you realized it or not. And all those small victories, all those seemingly insignificant choices to keep going, all those moments of pushing through when quitting would have been easier, they were building something, creating momentum, forming a foundation, preparing you for now, for this moment, for what's about to happen. You're going to look back at this time and see it differently than you see it now. Right now it feels like you're barely surviving, like you're just getting through, like you're hanging on by a thread. But you're going to look back and see that this was the turning point. This was when everything shifted. This was the moment right before the breakthrough. This is the night before the dawn. The last mile before the finish line. The final push before the victory. And you've made it this far. You've come through everything that tried to stop you. You've survived every season that felt like it would be the end of you. And now you're here, at the threshold, at the edge, at the place where waiting becomes receiving, where hoping becomes experiencing, where believing becomes seeing. You can rest in that. Rest in knowing you've come so far. Rest in trusting that you haven't come this far to only come this far. Rest in believing that the end of this chapter isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of the best part. Because tomorrow holds more than yesterday took away. Tomorrow carries promises that the past couldn't deliver. Tomorrow contains blessings that weren't ready to be released until now. Tomorrow is going to give back what was lost, and add to it things you never even knew to ask for. Tomorrow isn't just another day to survive. Tomorrow is the start of something new, something better, something worth everything it took to get here. And you're going to wake up to it. You're going to step into it. You're going to live it. The version of your life that you've been hoping for, praying for, barely allowing yourself to dream about. It's coming. It's close. So close you could reach out and touch it if you could see into tomorrow. But you don't have to see it to trust it. You don't have to know the details to believe it's real. You don't have to have proof to rest in the promise. You can close your eyes now. You can let your body relax. You can release the tension you've been holding in your shoulders, in your jaw, in your heart. You can breathe deeply and know that while you sleep, while you rest, while you let go, things are still being arranged. The plan is still unfolding. The promise is still being fulfilled. Nothing requires your worry. Nothing needs your anxiety. Nothing demands your fear. You can sleep in peace because you're not alone in this. You never were, and you never will be. Every step forward, God goes before you. Every challenge ahead, God has already made a way through. Every unknown tomorrow, God already knows and has already prepared for. You're held. You're covered. You're guided. You're loved. And you're not going to miss what's meant for you. You're not going to be passed over. You're not going to be forgotten. Your best days are ahead. They're waiting for you. They're being prepared for you. And soon, sooner than you think, you're going to walk into them. Rest now. Let go. Trust. Tomorrow is going to be different. Tomorrow is going to be better. Tomorrow is going to be the proof you've been waiting for, that everything you've been through was leading somewhere good. Tomorrow, your spring begins.